And we're back on a Poetry Thursday,
Woohoo!
and Dr. Jennie is going to both read us a poem and give us a dreadful warning.
I am indeed. So this poem would have been good for Halloween, and it would have been good for Victober and stuff. But I'm reading it now.
It's always Victober somewhere because
I
of the
suppose it is,
curvature
isn't
of the
it?
earth.
Yeah.
Okay, proceed.
It's called A Corpse Going to a Ball. Young Charlotte lived by the mountainside, a wild and lonely spot. No dwelling there for 3 miles round except her father's cot. And yet, on many a winter's eve, young swains were gathered there, for her father kept a social board, and she was very fair. Father loved to see her dressed as prim as a city belle, for she was all the child he had, and he loved his daughter well. 'Tis New Year's Eve, the sun is down. Why looks her restless eye so long from the frosty window forth, as the merry sleighs go by? At the village inn, 15 miles off, is a merry ball tonight. The piercing air is cold as death, but her heart is warm and light, and brightly beams her laughing eye, as a well-known voice she hears, and dashing up to the cottage door, her Charlie's sleigh appears. "Now, daughter dear," her mother cried, "this blanket round you fold, for 'tis a dreadful night abroad, you'll catch your death o' cold." Oh nay, fair Charlotte said, and she laughed like a gypsy queen. To ride with blankets muffled up I never could be seen. My silken cloak is quite enough, you know 'tis lined throughout, and then I have a silken shawl to tie my neck about. Her bonnet and her gloves are on, she jumps into the sleigh, and swift they ride by the mountain side and over the hills away. There's life in the sound of the merry bells as over the hills they go, but a creaking wail the runners make as they bite the frozen snow. How long the bleak and lonely way, how keen the wind does blow. The stars did never shine so cold, how creaks the frozen snow. With muffled faces, silently, 5 cold long miles they've passed, and Charles, with these few frozen words, the silence broke at last. Such night as this I never saw, the reins I scarce can hold. And Charlotte, shivering, faintly said, I am exceeding cold. He cracked his whip and urged his steed more swiftly than before, and now 5 other dreary miles in silent are passed o'er. How fast, said Charles, the freezing ice is gathering on my brow. But Charlotte said, with feebler tone, I'm growing warmer now. And on they went through the frosty air and the glittering cold starlight, and now at last the village inn and the ballroom are in sight. They reach the door, and Charles jumps out and holds his hand to her. Why sits she like a monument that hath no power to stir? He called her once, he called her twice, she answered not a word. He asked her for her hand again, but still she never stirred. He took her hand in his. Oh God, 'twas cold and hard as stone. He tore the mantle from her face, the cold stars on her shone. Then quickly to the lighted hall her voiceless form he bore. His Charlotte was a stiffened corpse, and word spake nevermore.
Wah!
I thank you.
So,
It's great, isn't it?
yeah, so just a basic bit of location. It's from 1840.
Yeah.
But why?
Why?
Why choose this? For
It's because
this
it's
jolly tale.
so cheerful. Well, it's a slightly tortuous story. One of my favourite YouTube channels is called Northern Mudlarks, and it's a mum and daughter, Gail and Alex, who go treasure hunting, searching old Victorian rubbish dumps for stuff and shorelines of sea and rivers for stuff, and they have a fondness for the quirky. You've never seen people so joyful at finding a poison bottle, Victorian poison bottle. But in one of the videos I watched recently, they found this tiny doll. It was about an inch and a half big, female doll, all cast as one, so its limbs didn't move. Got a little face, and its hair was painted black, curly hair painted black. And they said, "Oh, look, 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 we've never found one of these whole before. It's a frozen Charlotte." And so, bit later, so what they do is they film themselves at the dump digging stuff up, which is absolutely fascinating and very entertaining. And then at the end, they do a roundup to go through the finds that they found when they cleaned them up, and show you what they found and talk a little bit about them. And they got to this frozen Charlotte doll, and Alex said, yes, so these are penny dolls. So they were the cheapest doll you could find. Cheapest doll a child could buy, and a child with pocket money could probably afford to buy a penny doll on their own. And they're sometimes called pudding dolls because they would find their way into things like Christmas puddings. So it's traditional in parts of the UK to put charms and coins in your Christmas pudding for people to find and break their teeth on Christmas Day, and then have to wait 5 days till they can get to the dentist. And pudding dolls were one of the things. So you'd find silver sixpences, you might find lucky horseshoes, you could buy little boxes of Christmas pudding charms and put them in it, and these little pudding dolls. And she says, so penny dolls, pudding dolls, and they're also called frozen Charlottes. And then she said, but that name, Frozen Charlotte, was given to them after a poem had been published called Young Charlotte or Fair Charlotte. So I looked it up, and it's this poem by a American writer called Seba Smith, published in 1848. And it was originally published under the title A Corpse Going to a Ball. And I just thought it was... I'd hardly say it's a great poem, but it's a good bit of sensation.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Poetry.
And it, as a narrative, because when people would be reading aloud, and that was entertainment that all sorts of people would do. Sorry to be that guy. I think it might have been 1840.
Yeah.
And there's a folk song, a ballad as well.
That's right, yeah.
I won't try to relate the two together as which came first and stuff like that. It does seem, you told me that the poem was based on a newspaper article.
Some people say the poem was based on a newspaper.
Article's
and the title,
readable as well.
And the headline of the article was A Corpse Going to a Ball. And that's what he called the poem when it was first published.
Yeah.
But it later became also known as Fair Charlotte and Young Charlotte.
Yes.
And the folk song, the ballad, is called Fair Charlotte or Young Charlotte. Or there's a more recent version of it called Young Carlotta.
Right.
But they're all roughly the same. And there's a couple of different tunes. I looked it up on YouTube.
And I don't think we would swear that the ballad didn't somehow predate the poem or the newspaper story.
No.
That may or may not have been true, because it's one of those sort of things.
I'd probably say its origins are somewhat contested.
But the way it's presented here, it is a sort of... it seems to me like it's kind of telling you to wrap up warm.
Absolutely, it's a cautionary tale.
That's the word.
That's the word.
And it's also about vanity.
Yeah.
Because...
Yeah.
And I suppose indulging children. So there's various things combining to...
And young girls of flighty flippity gibbets who care more about how they look than...
Well, if you say
catching.
so, I thought that's probably not true these days.
And if you sit on cold concrete, you'll get piles.
And there's a physics lesson about wind chill factor.
There is a physics lesson about...
The fact he's going fast makes it worse.
Yeah.
And the fact that you feel warmer when you're about to
die of hypothermia. Yeah, I love that bit, actually. I mean, I know, obviously, it's horrible.
I'm sure there's a whole load of these cautionary tales as well.
Yeah.
I mean, people often put them up as memes, don't they? They found some Victorian drawing of little Johnny did this, and then they're dead.
Hilaire Belloc. Hilaire Belloc. Matilda told such dreadful lies it made one gasp and stretch one's eyes. Her aunt, who from her earliest youth had kept a strict regard for truth, attempted to believe Matilda. The effort very nearly killed her, and would have done so had not she discovered this infirmity.
You memorised that?
I memorised that as at school. We had to memorise 14 lines of a poem, so I memorised that.
Good God.
And we should memorise the whole poem because it's great. Yeah. It's a girl cries wolf story.
Right.
Basically. Right. But yeah, there's an awful lot to like in this kind of sensationalist, cautionary. There's an awful lot to like about it. Poor old Charlotte.
I mean, you could read it to make it funny.
You could read it to make it funny.
Because it's so over the top.
Yes, you could do it as an exit left elbow leading style.
Like your tiny hand is frozen.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
That's from, is it La Boheme? Puccini.
Right.
I don't like Puccini.
Good. Well,
So,
I'm
yeah,
going to
that's
put
it.
my big
It's
coat
great.
on now. No more silk. I'm not relying on my silk thingy being lined.
Even
That's
if it
obviously
is,
a snare and a delusion.
Yeah, and a silk shawl ain't going to get you nowhere in weather like that. But
I blame the parents.
I'll blame Charlie.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have speeded up. She'd have been all right if he'd gone really slow.
In the newspaper article, it was draws upon. It says in capital letters, "And the ball carried on!" 4 exclamation marks. It describes this like merry dances and bright candles. So it's like a bit of a clickbaity kind of. Look at this atrocious occurrence.
That's amazing.
Bung the corpse over there, and we'll do the dance the lancers.
Charlie'll find a different partner. It'll be okay.
Oh,
Stick her in a cupboard.
No wonder hardly anybody became adults. All
But
right,
yeah,
folks. Well,
if you're ever treasure hunting on a Victorian bottle dump, which aren't just they don't just have bottles in there, all sorts of things, including, if you're lucky, a whole penny doll, pudding doll, frozen Charlotte. And if you're interested in watching 2 women doing that, digging in a bottle dump or on a foreshore or that kind of thing, Northern Mudlarks.
Yeah, I'll put a link. It's really good.
Absolutely fantastic channel. All mudlarking is interesting.
Let us resume our lives.
Let us. I thank you, friends. Mind how you go. Keep out the Osrod. And thank your mother for the dripping. Try a bit.
Bye.